Let me make sure we live on YouTube.
Yeah, it says live.
Yeah, I know. I don't trust it though. I don't trust it at all, man. I want to wait till I can see myself. Hold on. Here we go. All right. Yeah, I do believe we are getting there. Politics and dirty tricks. It's still showing the same thing. All right. Okay. Yeah. Now we live. All right. Here we go. All right. Let me cancel that. And find Facebook. There we go. Come on, baby. Anytime. Eh, post that. All right. All right, we got. All right. Good evening and welcome to another Monday edition of the Aftermath. I'm your host, Saul G. I am joined once again, as always, with the Alfred to my Bruce Wayne, my man BJ, broadcasting live from Tennessee. How you doing, BJ?
How y'all doing?
Oh man, great. Oh man, he on video today. This must be a special occasion. He said he want the people to see him tonight, baby. In the building. Okay. Okay, that man on video tonight. That's what's up. So without further ado, I have to first of all start this show off with a retraction from last week. I guess I spoke too soon. So I do need to apologize to the lovely Congresswoman from Utah. As it stands right now, Miss Mia Love has retaken the lead in that after the recount. She has taken the lead in Utah. So again, we called that race. Well, I ain't gonna say we. I called it a little bit last week, and I said that she had lost. And as it stands right now, she is winning. Doesn't mean she's going to win, but she is in the lead right now. So Democrats who might have been talking about, one topic we're going to talk about before we get into the main topic is voter suppression. So this is one of those times where a Democrat was winning, went to a recount, the Republicans winning. The only problem in this one is the Republican's black and the Democrat is white. So it doesn't necessarily fit your wonderful narrative of how you would try to make this look like voter suppression or how you would try to turn this into a stolen election. So let's talk about what's going on in the great state, my home state, the great peach state of Georgia. Okay. We have had one of the most trifling, divisive elections I've seen in a long time. And the reason why it has gotten that way is because, in my opinion, I believe people cannot accept the results of an election. Okay. If you win an election, you thank your opponent for running a good race and you move forward. If you lose an election, you thank your opponent for running a good race and you say, hey, we did all we could do. We fought hard. We're never going to stop fighting, but let's come together and blah, 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 this. Apparently that doesn't work in Georgia anymore because for some odd reason, the Democratic former nominee for governor, Stacey Abrams, will not concede the election. Now, she's already said that Brian Kemp is going to be the next governor of Georgia, but she has yet to formally concede the race or basically do the political thing, right? Which is what we're so accustomed to seeing. Now, I have multiple problems with this because I have a quick video that I'm going to show you in a while. But first of all, tonight my show is going to be informative for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then we're going to have some fun. But for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I want to explain it. And I am taking this information directly from the voter website of DeKalb County, okay? Because what we want to claim is we want to claim voter suppression. I love my job because it gives me the ability to talk to multiple people. When they told me of voter suppression before, they would speak of things like a literacy test, right? Which means you got to be able to read and write. You got to be able to pass some sort of standardized test to vote before you voted. That's voter suppression. As soon as Reconstruction started and the majority of the slaves did not have any way to ID themselves, such as a birth certificate, ID, whatever the case may be, any of those things, right? That's voter suppression, right? Because they are literally doing something that is exactly race-based, because you could go back in 1865, 1866 and say, who is unlikely to have who's unlikely to have a way to identify themselves? You know what I should do? I should go, and if I could find that clip from the state of, I think it was called the state of Jones. I'm gonna see if I can find it while I'm watching this other clip. But voter suppression, we need to be able to identify clearly what that means and what that looks like. We know about Jim Crow in the South, and we know for a long time, both Democrats and Republicans did a lot of things to stop Black people from voting, unless they, were voting hypothetically the right way. So we know what voter suppression looks like, but we need to be able to identify what it is not. Okay, so first of all, the first thing I'm going to read to you is this is coming off the DeKalb County of Georgia Voter Election Board. And it's basically going to tell you, so even if you don't know, or if you want to tell a friend, you want to be able to give them, this is nonpartisan information. This is direct information. This is what you need to do to be able to vote or to be eligible to vote. You have to be a citizen of the United States, period. So if you're not a citizen, you can't vote. It's simple. All right. You must be a legal resident of Georgia. All right. You must be at least 17 and a half years to register, but you must be 18 by the time the elections come around. Third, you must not be serving a sentence for a conviction of a felony involving moral turpitude. I'm not sure what moral turpitude means, but basically, we'll go into that later. But I'm just giving you the definition so you can make somebody else seem real smart and say moral turpitude. If they ask you what that is, just say it's probably a bad felony. We're just gonna say it's probably a violent felony. I'm not quite sure, but it's probably some sort of violent felony. We'll get in that later. And then you have not been found mentally incompetent by a judge. Okay, so if you meet all those qualifications, you can get a voter registration form. Okay, and there are ways you can get an application. You can go to the Secretary of State's website. You can go to the election office. You can go to public libraries, fire stations, the DeKalb County Housing Authority, churches. All these different things can happen. Now, here you go. Now, this is where a lot of people not necessarily ran the problem, but here you go. You may register to vote the day you become a DeKalb County resident, provided your registration is at least 30 days prior to any primary or general election. For a special election, you may register 5 days after the election is advertised in the county newspaper. All right, so right there, you have all the rules, so that way we should be all on the same accord to know what we need to do. Now I'm going to switch and I'm going to go to the Fulton County Board of Electors, which is who the video clip you're about to see. This, and by their own admission, you can go to, this is www.fultoncountyga.gov. And you can go into there about the Department of Registration and Elections. And I want you to hear, this is what these people say. Now, Fulton County includes where the people on this video, they went to Morehouse. That is located within Fulton County. I live in Fulton County, okay? The Board of Elections that were responsible for me going to go vote, it's the same county, all right? So Atlanta, the city of Atlanta is basically located entirely in Fulton County, okay? So anybody who was within the city of Atlanta who had problems during the last election, this is what you need to listen to, okay? This says, the department overview and goals. The Registration and Election Department is responsible for conducting elections in Fulton County and registering voters who reside within Fulton County. The Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections has jurisdiction over the Department of Registration and Elections. The department is headed by a director who is the chief administrative officer to the Board of Registration and Elections. Okay, now they break it down into 3 divisions. I'm only going to talk about the first one because it is the most important and it's the one that keeps getting talked about. Now, check this out. The Elections Division is responsible, keyword, this is on their website, right? I'm not making this up because I'm not that smart and I couldn't read something that was this planned out, all right? The elections division is responsible. Hey, why am I trying to wake up now? Anyway, the elections division is responsible of conducting national, state, county, and municipal elections, maintaining campaign disclosure reports, and conducting school and organizational elections. This division is also responsible for selection, preparation, and equipping of polling places, precinct management, including redrawing precinct lines, recruiting, training, and assigning poll workers, and maintaining, preparing, distributing, and retrieving voting equipment, and maintaining inventory of voting equipment and supplies. So right there, it says underneath the Department of Registration and Elections, the elections division of that department is fully responsible for all these voting machine problems, the lines, the polling places being properly equipped. We want to blame everybody else instead of the people who are responsible. If you live in Fulton County and you had a problem, don't go to the Secretary of State office, even though under the umbrella, yes, they do fall up under the Secretary of State's office. But it's almost like saying, if you go to McDonald's, dang it, I keep forgetting McDonald's ain't paid me yet. If you go to we're going to use McDonald's, it's all good. If you go to McDonald's and you order a quarter pounder with cheese with no onions and they put onions on it, right? Are you going to go to, let's say the corporate offices in New York City? Are you going to take that hamburger to the New York City corporate office and say, hey, look, this cheeseburger has onions on it. I didn't ask for that. They're going to look at you and say, that's you and you're crazy. And I would never do that. You understand what I'm saying? But nobody, but seriously, nobody's going to take their cheeseburger to the grand old corporate office that's not located. You're going to handle a local problem with the local person. You understand what I'm saying? It just makes sense. It doesn't make sense to take, you had a problem at your local polling thing, and then you blame the CEO, which is the Secretary of State. And that's what's going on. That one McDonald's could just be not well ran. But instead, it's so much easier to blame the CEO of the entire corporation because it goes to your narrative. And that's the problem that I have. Anybody who ever has a problem with voting, go to the Board of Electors. That's what they're there for. This is the reason why the Secretary of State office distributes tasks around. They have different divisions and different things that they're responsible for. So now that I've explained to you who's responsible, right? Now, it is no disrespect to the great University of Morehouse, but I must say I was disappointed when I saw this video because these are some bright, intelligent young men and supposedly professors. And the fact that they would say what they're about to say, I think is a shame because even people who are very, very intelligent can be moved in a certain direction, right? You start hearing, it's like, okay, let me see. Voter suppression is happening. Okay, I get that. Okay. All right, well, let me go vote. Okay. All right, here's my ID. Cool. All right, here's my ID. Okay, here's my voter card. Okay, bam, put it in the machine. Boop, 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 boop. All right, confirm my vote. All right, bam, pops out. Thank you for my little I voted sticker. Walk out the door. And then when they get home, they read voter suppression in Georgia. Yep, see? Yeah, man, they don't want black folks voting. And you just voted. You just walked in there and you voted. But instead, you want to make up this narrative that I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying there weren't long lines because I saw them the whole day. I was driving people to the polls all day. I saw the long line. But that's not voter suppression. Because guess what? 2 weeks before the election, what could you have done? You could have voted early. You could have sent an absentee ballot. But you decided not to do that. You decided to wait till election day to vote. So where is the voter suppression coming in? And then we have these things we're saying, well, people couldn't fill out the ballot properly. And because you couldn't fill out the ballot properly, the ballots were designed to trip up minorities. Like, wait, hold on. What does that mean? How is a ballot designed to trip up a certain specific segment of people? It's like we just need to start to own things. And what I'm saying is we need to own it. So, BJ, go ahead and pull up this this clip real quick. It talks about voter suppression. That's the one for the Morehouse, and yeah, we're just gonna get through this pretty quick. Go ahead.
Typically, when I think of voter suppression, I think of the stories my grandma or grandpa would tell me about, literacy tests or having to count how many jelly beans are in a jar.
Okay, stop.
It seems like.
Okay, see now listen to what he said. When he thinks of voter suppression, he thinks of his grandfather, which means stuff that happened a long time ago. Literacy tests, counting jelly beans in a jar. That's what he said. Okay, but now he said, but today, and he's about to say, but today it seems like more a problem with access. Access is not voter suppression. If you don't have a car to get you to the polls, that's not voter suppression because, man, I'm poor, I ain't got no car. The white folks don't want me to vote. That's not voter suppression. It's like, I don't understand how people don't understand the difference between what was going on and what's going on right now. So go ahead, keep going.
More of a problem of access.
Okay, so you see the people in line. Okay.
It seems like this past governor's race was really kind of filled with people trying to stop people from voting, and especially in areas with a lot of minorities.
Stop before me, BJ. Okay, so that's my problem right there. He said, especially in areas where minorities were voting. Once again, I just read you straight off the Board of Elections site who's responsible for that. So when you say they were trying to stop you from voting, who exactly is the they that you're referring to? If you go back and watch, roll it back some. I want you to see this, right? I want you to see the voter suppression. Like, just roll back where they showed the line. Go back some when they see the line. Keep going back a little bit more. Okay, now stop it right now. Now all I want you to do is like, where's Waldo? Somebody spot a white person for me. Please hit play. Where are the white people that are suppressing the votes? Where are they? Look in the line. Where are white people at? There was no white people in. You keep going. There were no white people in the line. Or maybe it's black Republicans trying to suppress the vote.
It was really kind of filled with people trying to stop people from voting, and especially in areas with a lot of minorities.
Efforts to dilute the vote, make it hard for people to vote, can make a big difference in determining the outcome of an election. When you start talking about 1.5 million people purged from the polls, or 53,000 people who have their voter registration questioned, when you
pause
long lines where dozens.
Okay, when he says 1.3 million people vote, he's talking about in the last 8 years. Okay, now if you don't know nothing about Atlanta, a lot of people move to Atlanta. A lot of people within Atlanta move. If you move, like for example, I no longer live at Greenbrier Parkway. All right. Anybody who knows what Greenbrier Parkway know that's the hood. I no longer live at Greenbrier Parkway. Okay. So because I no longer live at Greenbrier Parkway, guess what? My voter registration identification for my address at Greenbrier Parkway is no longer in the system. I'm gonna tell you why. Because it's at my new address. Because if they didn't purge the voter rolls, then I would have what's called a double registration. When you have that, you have to try to prove. That's when you got to bring a form of like a utility bill to prove where you live. So purging the voter rolls does not mean unless you haven't re-registered to vote. Now, same thing. If you are voter conscious and you voted, then you should have been able to vote one time. And then once you move, you re-register to vote again. When the purge happens, right? Then your old address gets thrown away and your new address gets replaced and you get to go vote. All right, continue.
Upon dozens in different counties, people may leave the line and not cast their vote. That can add up and ultimately shape what ultimately happened.
Some of the machines weren't working. They didn't supply the right materials to get the machines working. So
Board of Elections
got some extension on it, but just the fact that the lines were long, that it had to stop, it stopped a lot of people from voting.
Polling stations sometimes don't have enough places to actually cast your ballot, and so that can create long lines. And for people again who are working,
look at the lines, man. It's nothing but us in these lines.
They have had an hour or two at the most to cast their ballot. May find that another obstacle. But if you look at the past history of the ways that people try to manipulate the ballot in order to achieve a particular outcome, those tactics, they are just reinvented, refashioned, and oftentimes executed in much more subtle forms.
I actually had someone text me during election season because the station that they went to was doing paper ballots, and they ran out of paper envelopes for people to sign and to send off to wherever they needed to go to be counted.
All right, stop.
Because of that.
All right, see once again, this goes back to my problem. You can go ahead. We're not gonna finish this video because I want to get to the Stacey Abrams one, and then I want to get to my topic real quick. This is the problem that I have, right? Because you continuously have them. They're just telling you what was going on. They had problems with the not enough paper ballots. Not enough paper ballots is not the responsibility of the Secretary of State.
And also, these are just normal problems that people have. Sometimes you run out of envelopes. Sometimes the polling machines are old, so sometimes they don't work.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. And I just read to you who's responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of those machines is the Fulton County Board of Elections, and they're not getting any fire at all. It's all going to Brian Kemp. The only, even this voter suppression thing. Even made the Daily Show. You know what I mean? So everybody's talking about Georgia having this election that was basically stolen. So go ahead and pull up, and I'm gonna not go through this whole interview too. I just want to show you, to me, the epitome, right? Because this is CNN, okay? This is CNN interviewing Stacey Abrams after the election. And I want you to just watch what she says. And this is Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper is no conservative. He's no Republican by any means. And we know CNN has no love for anything on the right. But just watch this interview.
Joining me now for her first national interview since ending the race is Stacey Abrams, the former minority leader of the Georgia State House. Leader Abrams, thanks so much for joining us. You said that, quote, democracy failed in Georgia. Obviously, you're referring to some of the messy process of democracy, as you called it, incompetence and mismanagement. But do you think that there was deliberate interference in the election?
Yes. And I believe it began 8 years ago with the systematic disenfranchisement of more than 1 million voters. It continued with...
Stop. See, when she uses that term disenfranchised, by purging your old address, that is not disenfranchising you, right? If someone came to me and said, hey, I haven't moved, I've voted in the last 4 elections since I've been at this address. If I went to vote and they said, hey, your vote, you're not registered at this address or something like that, then yes, that would be including what's going on. But see, they always use the same terms: disenfranchisement, voter suppression, all these different things. But keep going.
And disinvestment in polling places, in training, and in the management of the county delivery of services. And I think it had its pinnacle in this race. But a few months before, in May of 2018, a Republican primary had to be called for a do-over because a number of voters did not receive accurate ballots. We know that there has been a dramatic discrepancy in the way absentee ballots are both allocated and counted across the 159 counties. And so, yes, there was a deliberate and intentional disinvestment and I think destruction of the administration of elections in the state of Georgia.
Well, let me ask you, because Kemp, when he was Secretary of State, did oversee a process in which 1.5 million voters were removed from the voting rolls. Here in Washington, D.C., which is hardly a Republican stronghold, if you don't vote in the last 4 years, you're removed from the voting rolls. And I don't think anybody thinks that's disenfranchisement. That's just people being removed from the rolls because of inactivity. What's the difference between what Kemp did, and if you don't vote within 3 years in Georgia, you're removed from the rolls, and what they do all over the country, including here in Washington?
Maintaining clean voter rolls is absolutely appropriate, but the vigor with which he did so and the mismanagement with which he did so. A perfect example is the 92-year-old civil rights activist who's lived in the West End of Atlanta for more than 40 years, has voted in every single election.
Yeah, the West End is in Fulton County as well.
And she was removed from the polls. She went to vote and her daughter had to take more than 2 hours to get her access to a provisional ballot. This is someone who has never failed to vote. And so the problem we have is that it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's not sufficient to simply purge voters from the rolls for inactivity. He removed voters who were eligible. He also denied access to more than 3,000 new citizens who should have been added to the rolls, but he prevented them from being able to vote. And the larger issue is this: trust in our democracy relies on believing that there are good actors who are making this happen. And he was a horrible actor who benefited from his perfidy. That's problematic.
Take a listen to what Ohio Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown said about your race just a few days ago.
If Stacey Abrams doesn't win in Georgia, they stole it. It's clear. It's clear. And I say that.
I thought he was going to be black. What type of white dude is named Sherrod Brown? The first white dude ever known named Sherrod Brown. That's crazy.
You might have been raised by black people.
The legitimate governor-elect of Georgia.
The law as it stands, he received an adequate number of votes to become the governor of Georgia. And I acknowledge the laws.
Okay, stop. Yeah, because it just keeps getting worse from here. Now, what she said was, and you can go ahead and pull that back. She's basically said, he said, is he the legitimate governor of Georgia? Her response is, well, based on the law as we know it right now, he is the legal governor of Georgia. Like, that's my whole point. Isn't that how we do everything based on the laws we know it right now? Like, I can't just go smoke a blunt, right? Because marijuana is not legal as the law states right now. Yes, I would smoke this blunt, but as the law states right now, in its common form, it is illegal. But this is those type of political hoops that she wants to try to make it seem. And later on in the interview, she tries to make it seem like she's being nonpartisan when she's not. The major problem that I have and that I will continue to have with all these different things of people who claim it, when you look in Georgia, there was no Democratic incumbent who was beat by a Republican due to voter suppression. Like, I would totally have like, let's just say, for example, John Lewis ran unopposed. If some white Republican somehow ran versus John Lewis and they were claiming voter suppression and the Republican won in John Lewis district, who basically has run unopposed for, God, I can't remember when the last time he had an opponent, like maybe 10 or 12 years, maybe, then yeah, I would get it. But in this situation, all the black incumbents, in at least in Atlanta, won, and they won easily. Some of them had Republican opponents, some of them ran unopposed. So when we use these terms, you can go ahead and take that down, because I can't take what she's gonna say at the end, because it just, you can come back and watch the rest of it if you want to. I want to get into my wonderful topic for tonight, because I just wanted to say, like, this, we have to make all our people accountable. And we have to be able to accept defeat when we lose. We have to be able to, because otherwise we look like a bunch of excuse makers. And it's not just black people, it's not just Democrats, it's not just Republicans. Okay. When the last election happened and Donald Trump was like, remember what Hillary Clinton said? Accept the results of the election, accept the results, right? That's what we're told. I had already accepted in my mind the day before the election that Donald Trump had no shot at all of winning. So I'd already counted Hillary Clinton as the president anyway. So when he did win, I was just like, well, shoot, there ain't nothing to say. I accepted the results of the election, but everybody else has not. Everyone else could not. And I think even when it doesn't go in your favor, let's say hypothetically you run Joe Biden, and Joe Biden wins in 2020, then you know what I'm going to say after the day after the election? Joe Biden is my president. I'm not going to sit there and claim it was because of some foreign power. I'm not going to say he stole it. I'm going to say if the votes line up and he wins the Electoral College, which is the way that our election process works, he's my president, period. I'm not going to call him 46. I'm not going to call him Uncle Joe. I will call him my president the same way I have done every single person in the past. So we need to get to the point of when you lose, you lose. When you win, you win. So I really hope that our state can continue to move forward. And just for the record, I'm going on record as saying there is a recount vote on December 4th. Great day, great day, great day. Some of you people know why. Great day, December 4th, for Secretary of State. And I will be casting my ballot for the Democrat for this very exact reason. I do not want 2020 to come around and you still make up all the excuses. So if everybody wants to take all the excuses away, vote for the Democrat, because if the Democrat is in charge of the Secretary of State's office, these machines not working, let's see in 2 years will you lay it at the feet of the democratically elected person, because that's what you're doing right now. You know, you're doing that right now, and it's not fair. So yeah, I'm telling you right now, I'm voting for the Democrat because I don't want to hear it in 2 years if you know, let's just say Stacey Abrams runs for Senate and she doesn't win. Then all this voter suppression. Remember what you said, the fight hasn't ended. You're supposed to be working towards that. But anyway, now time to get to my wonderful topic of the night, and that is dating and dealing with people. Where does politics kind of play a role? Can you date someone who is of a different political background of you? You know, if you consider yourself a Democrat, could you date a Republican? Could you date, you know, if you're a Hillary supporter, could you date a Trump supporter, Bernie supporter, all these different types of things, because there's so many ideologies and different ways to break this up. So tonight, like I said, I'm going to let BJ, and I brought on my special guest, YBLS, if for no more, to connect me to a bunch of great individuals. YBLS was a great success in DC because it has connected me to so many people who I probably would have never met before. And they just have some great stories, opinions, things of that nature. And this guy, Joe Latham, he has proven me to be a very bright young man. And I'm gonna let him talk for a little bit. Welcome to the show, Joe. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you.
Okay, and Joe, let everyone know where you are. I guess not calling from, but where you at right now?
In Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So he is right up the street from the wonderful Crimson Tide. Okay, yeah. All right, we're gonna let that slide. Even though, I mean, technically on my T-shirt, this is either a Brave shirt or Alabama. Alabama might try to claim this A, but we're going to say it's a Brave shirt because it's gray tonight. So we're just going to claim that. So, Joe, in your dealings with the other gender or whatever the case may be, first of all, like, do you discuss politics on first date?
Not on the first date. Well, if it comes up, yeah. But you tend to try to shy away from those topics, or at least, you know, maybe save it to the end after you get to know them a little bit better to find where you can squeeze in those questions.
End of the date, you mean, or you mean like end of like, no, I mean like a couple of,
like a section, like
a section. Okay, when you say yeah, that's what I'm saying. End is like so the check comes and you're like, so you know, what's your stance on, you know, before I pay this check, what's your stance on abortion?
Like they say no.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You get something real deep. You know what I'm saying? The check comes and you like, so you pro-life? Okay, yeah, it's gonna be separate checks. I'm just playing with you, but like. My thing is, I think that I'll put you like this. I think there is pre-2016 dating, and then there's now. Because pre-2016 dating, honestly, people was pretty open to whatever you had to say politically. Mm-hmm. But now, since everything always falls back to Trump, not necessarily as open as they used to be. I think that, you know, like I said, when it comes to politics or whatever the case may be, it has become such a divisive topic that it's kind of hard to even slide that in at the dinner table or wherever you might happen to be. Have you ever dated someone? Okay, because first of all, explain like your political ideology so we can all be on the same accord here. Go ahead.
Well, it's actually shifted probably as recent as the beginning of this year.
Okay.
I actually I'm not gonna even say I was Democrat really. I was more so one of those people who didn't care about politics. Didn't care about Democrats, didn't care about Republicans, but I had always heard the most about Democrats because, of course, you know, family.
Correct.
As soon as I got out of college, I started doing my own research because as you know, time started going on. I graduated actually last December. You know, Trump won. What 2020 well, was sworn in 2017 but won in 2016, and I remember having a conversation with someone talking about this is the end, and he said like this is the end for blacks in America. That was the day after, you know, Trump had won. So after talking with him since then, like we completely started going our separate ways because he became a victim essentially. And I was just like, nah, something's not right about that. Like, how can you be so far gone in an ideology to the point where you just shut down and, you know, stop having open dialogue with everyone? So for me, I just started, again, researching. Came across a bunch of different political videos, people who were against Trump. And then once he started doing stuff in 2017, they actually jumped on board with him. So I slowly started to change my view on it as well, because I was like, there's no way possible that everything that CNN and all these other news stations that they're saying about him is true. You know, there's no way. Came across a video by another YouTuber called Mr. Reagan, where he like spent like an entire hour just going through different stuff, breaking down like what the media had said about Trump, and then, you know, basically debunking, you know. So at that point, that's when I was like, okay, time to support this man.
Gotcha.
So
you are a Trump supporter, right?
I would say I support him because he's the president.
Gotcha.
I wouldn't say like, you know, just full on blind support like most people are, you know, going around yelling, "Make America Great Again." But
okay, I got you. You support him because he's the president. So then my question is, I guess when you were, question. Was this the first election you voted in?
No, I actually voted Obama's second term, and even then I put independent.
Okay, so cool. So when you voted for Obama, then at that point in time, did you know that? I mean, did you date anyone that was a Republican or a conservative? Do you even really know what that stuff was at the time, or could you tell like a difference?
I would always say I've always, like, the reason why I kind of, I guess, adapted more to the conservative side, because I would actually view myself, I've always been conservative. I just didn't know it yet, so to speak.
Okay.
So to me, it wasn't about like, what's your political affiliation when I was dating back then, and sometimes even now. It's just, you know, what are your views on certain things? Like, if you were to have kids, how would you raise them? Stuff like that. And that's, I mean, nowadays, since everything's political, you know, I can still ask those same questions and find out where people stand politically. So that's.
But then the other question, I think that would be kind of different though, because sometimes the way people answer those questions might not give you the answer as far as their political affiliation at times. Because, you know, the big claim is that a lot of Black people are conservatives. They just don't necessarily like Republicans. And I tend to somewhat agree, but most days I'm starting to kind of go away from that. I don't necessarily know if I believe the majority of Black people are conservative. I believe they have certain tendencies that we might all agree with. Mm-hmm. But I think conservative has to be something that they have to latch on to. And I'm not saying they have to say, oh, I'm a full-blown conservative, I support Trump. Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you say something that is going on right now, their reaction to whatever you're saying in the contrary should be, nah, I don't like that. If they're just like, oh, well, you know, that's not that bad. It's just like, you know, like I talked to somebody the other day about Andrew Gillum in Florida, and they was like, oh yeah, I like everything he stands for. And I said, whoa. I said, you like everything he stands for? I said, you mean like his platform, or you mean like because he's a Black man, he's a husband, he's a father, he's had some success? What are we talking about? And she was like, everything. I said, so you believe that, you know, you're fine for, you know, paying extra taxes and all the rest of that stuff to give everyone Medicare? She was like, yeah, I'm fine with that, you know. And it's like, I mean, what do you say? That's, you're entitled to your opinion. But at the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, you don't, I especially like I said, if it's a date, you got to kind of be careful. You know what I mean? Because it's like there's a goal to dating, so you don't want to kind of crush somebody on their political views, because you know it makes it pointless. Because I know you said like when you were you voted for Obama, could you tell?
I voted independent. I just voted. That was my first time voting. Like, was during his second term. I didn't.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this is my question.
Yeah.
Can you tell the difference between and I'm not talking about like going straight issue. Yeah. Do you feel like when you're out with somebody, can you tell whether or not she's a Republican or a Democrat or a conservative, liberal, whatever? Do you feel like you can tell?
That's a hard question. I would say with some you can, some you can't. But overwhelmingly, I would say you can't, because it's almost impossible to tell how people think just by looking at them. But I mean,
well, I'm not talking about physical appearance. We can get into that in a second. But
okay.
I don't think the physical appearance. I'm saying, like, for example, if you're talking to a young lady or whatever case, y'all are having, this conversation at the dinner table or whatnot.
Oh, okay.
Is there a trigger that could say, even before, like, this person is a conservative, or this person is a Republican, or this person is a Democrat, or a liberal, or whatever the case may be? Has it ever kind of, you've been talking at the table and you like, oh yeah, I know where this person is going?
Well, there's been one instance, like, let's say, where I pulled out a chair for someone, and pretty much the first thing was like full on, like, to me, like, feminist mode, where it's like, I don't need a man to do that kind of stuff for me, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't like the, polite way of, I can do it, don't worry about it. It was just like,
right.
And from that point on, I was like, okay, I know which way you're leaning. Like,
correct. So you assumed what? You assumed she was
more liberal, like, with the whole,
okay.
Because to me, modern feminists, I'll put it that way. We're third wave feminists, fourth wave. I don't know what wave they're on now, but
I can't keep up.
But it's like normally, like,
I just say the bad one. That's the one they're on now. Whatever one they're on, whatever wave, it's bad. And I always say, real feminists are good people. The fake ones are the worst.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, the fake feminism means, like, because you got to understand, it's like they use that term toxic masculinity or whatnot, and I'm like, you say you want men to be chivalrous, but you have problems with men who are technically a chauvinist. And I'm like, they're almost the same thing.
Yeah.
They're not too different. It doesn't mean that we're telling women what they can and cannot do. We're just it's kind of like they almost line themselves up. So the feminist thing, like the opening doors, right? So
yeah.
I had a conversation about that the other day. Why is it some sort of like your rights are being infringed upon for a man to open the door? And I know I do that a lot now as well. Like, if I'm going to a bank and I see a young lady behind me, I'll hold the door. Now, if it's a dude, I mean, he might get hit by the door. I ain't gonna lie to you. If it's a woman, you understand what I'm saying, coming into the bank or wherever I'm at, and she's walking behind me and doesn't have automatic doors, I'm gonna hold the door.
Yeah.
Now, I think, go ahead.
For me, I actually just hold the door for everybody.
Nah, I don't do that. I hold the door. I hold the door until the next dude comes and relieves me. Like, yo, bro, get the door. You know what I'm saying, bro? Come get this door. You understand what I'm saying? If I done held the door for 3 people and a dude walks out, like, I appreciate it, bro. No, dude, you hold the door for the next people coming because I need to go. You understand what I'm saying? Like, my duties have stopped.
I'm just nice like that, you know.
Yeah. I agree. Now, there is because, like, this is my thing, and I have to start going through my Rolodex, but it's like when you open when you open up that black book and you start going through, like,
let me get this black book.
Yeah, nah, man, you don't want my leftovers, man. You don't want that, man.
I wish I had a black book.
Man, it's too many women out here, man. We don't need to, we don't need to be Escobar brothers, man. It's too many women out here, man.
Nah, they have to get a ring first. So.
Oh look, okay. So here we go. So as I start to go back, I do not think I have ever dated, been in a relationship, anything with a woman who was Republican or conservative. I went out on a date to a movie one time, and then I went to a lunch and a movie with a girl who I was confirmed was a Republican, but we didn't necessarily, I wouldn't consider us like dating. You know what I mean? Like, I consider like we were talking. I think I met her on like one of the apps. It was either, POF, Tinder, whatever people are using these days, one of the little dating apps. I met her on one of them. And she was a Republican, conservative, or whatever the case may be. But that's like one. Yeah. I think every other single girl that I've ever been with in my entire life has all been Democrats or liberals. I don't ever think I've dated any Republican. You, Joe? They're hard to find. Yeah. Well, we're not going to touch because you know what the topic is for Thursday. But when you say they're hard to find, you would be speaking about Black conservative women, correct?
Yes, I guess.
Because you're talking because depends on where you live. I mean, because for me, let's say, like when those times did come up, where political stuff did come up, and I knew which way the woman, leaned. Every time it was a conservative, 9 times out of 10, she was already taken.
Gotcha.
I ran into that a lot. Like she was already taken. And most of them were already thinking about marriage. Now, with the liberal women or left-leaning, whatever, they tended to be open relationships or dating around, like answers like that is what you would get. So to me, I think it depends on where you live too, like with BJ's instance, them being hard to find. And another side of that is also, like I said before, like most of the conservative women, regardless of race, they already tend to be taken.
But see, I guess that's going to be the difference between our answers. You both live in what are considered college towns. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. Y'all both live in like I said, what are basically considered college towns. I live in Atlanta, so it's completely different. Yeah. Because like I live in quote unquote a major city with you can pretty much find whatever you want here. But that's the reason why when I asked BJ, like, you're saying necessarily like race doesn't have a part to play. I think that we're just gonna keep it to like quote unquote Black women. Now, if you're trying to find a Black woman who's conservative, and I would say in a city like Atlanta, good luck. I'm not gonna say they don't exist, but I have I have never met someone who I was even getting a slight Republican, right-leaning, not just anti-everything vibe from, because to me, it's shifted. The women here have gotten increasingly more progressive. And that's a problem. A lot of people don't, I always tell people, I don't have a problem with really liberals. It's progressives who have the problem, because a true liberal, if they disagree with you, they shouldn't now. Now, I understand it's changed. It's kind of sort of like we talked about what a feminist used to be. A liberal will kind of just disagree with you and be like, whatever. Yeah. But a progressive says, if I disagree with you, that makes you wrong because you don't have the appropriate and the proper views. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Like it's completely different. So that's the thing that I'm saying. So the last relationship that you were in, Joe, was was she a conservative or a Republican? I mean, or a liberal? Was she right-leaning, left-leaning? Did y'all get into politics at all?
She was definitely more to me, I kind of separate the term Republican and conservative, because you can be a conservative, not like you said earlier, you can be a conservative but not a Republican. She was a conservative but not a Republican. But her whole view on stuff was that she didn't care about politics either way. Like Democrat, she said basically her whole philosophy about politics is that it's all evil. She had said Democrats are evil, Republicans are evil. She doesn't care.
Sounds about right.
Like I actually completely respected that. But then when she wanted to start talking about politics, that's where we would start clashing. Because I would say, hey, well, this is what Trump is doing, and then she would try to fire back with something she heard on about CNN or something that her friends or something told her, and it was then we got into a discussion about using logic over emotion, and it just. Then by that time, it was just like, you know what, let's stop this conversation before we have it out, because sadly, she did know enough to fully combat what I was saying. Right. And it was just like, this conversation is going to go anywhere because you're arguing solely off of what you've heard.
Correct.
So with that relationship, I mean, that tends to be where the politics go. It's just like, it goes so far and then it's like, you know what, let's stop talking about it or else we're going to be at this all night.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, because like my last ex or whatnot, well, I guess my last ex, like we were complete polar opposites, right? Like we were complete polar opposites, but it worked. It worked perfectly fine because she was fine in who she was and I was completely fine in who I was. You know what I mean? It was like, you know, she was the type to have the Obama family portrait at her house, you know what I'm saying? And on her Facebook page, Instagram, and all this type of stuff. And, you know, she was just like, you know, you can be my Barack. And I'm like, I don't know about that one. I don't want to be your Barack. But, you know, I can be your, you know, man, let's just pick any other leader in history. I don't necessarily know if I want to be your Barack, man. There's a lot of different things I could be. I didn't want to be anyone's Barack, you know, but it worked. She was a feminist, but she was I would say a good feminist. She was good feminist because the thing about a good feminist is they know they need men and they appreciate what men do. They just are like, you know, she was one of those people who was an actual victim of like sexual assault. So she was very pro like victims of sexual assault. You know what I'm saying? She had spoke at some you know, some marches, some sit-ins, some things like that. She was very about supporting them, making sure they knew that their voices need to be heard, because that's one of the things that I always say when I hear about, you know, some of those horrible things that happen. I think women should speak up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Those type of feminists I have no problem with. If a man takes something that doesn't belong to him, you'll never get an argument out of me saying that he shouldn't be locked up, he shouldn't be castrated, killed, whatever. You're never going to hear an argument from me from that perspective. And those type of feminists who are doing that from a position of, this really happened to me, I want other girls to be more proactive so that maybe we can at least start getting these guys convicted and put away, instead of just keeping it inside for a long time. And then, you know, like I said, it becomes that pop-up situation, because like I said, the guy who did it to her, if I'm not mistaken, he's in jail right now, which is a good thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the type of feminists that I can get with. The women who are, you know, talking about the economic disparity and things like that. I'll still rock with you on that. If, you know, if male teachers were getting paid more, or male firemen, or male police officers, or some of these jobs that aren't required, like, you know, for example, like if it's sales, we can't really talk about economic disparity. Or like if you're a lawyer, then it's whatever you charge, right? You know what I'm saying? It's the size of your cases. Now, if you're not getting the cases, I don't know how you fix it, but I'll ride with you on the economic disparity. I won't ride with you is I deserve this job because I'm a woman. Like that's where you start to lose me, when you start to make it seem like you're better than men. You said you wanted equality. So if you want equality, that means that we can both move forward at the same time. It doesn't mean that you deserve something more.
But I would even say
do.
I mean, I know this isn't like a feminist, I guess, debate or talk or whatever, but it's like, even with that, when women make that argument and some men make that argument, like, I still think back to my first job ever, which was Chick-fil-A.
Right.
My sister worked there. I went in making like $8.75. She was already making like 11 something. I didn't make a big deal about it. Why? Because she was already there. She was there longer. So it's like even with that, it's like, oh, like the women that are fighting for coming in, getting paid the same amount as a man that has been there for years. To me, that still should even be a fight. Like, it shouldn't even be
correct.
And that's like when they're talking about. Go ahead, BJ.
No, go ahead.
No, but it's like when they're talking about, you know, these disparities. It's like, okay, what disparity are you specifically talking about? Like, I think I heard something today with like engineers. They're talking about, oh, well, women are paid a whole lot less than men, or no, it wasn't like that. It was like men are making more than women in this field. And then when you look up like the percentages of how many men go in engineering and how many women are in engineering, then it becomes obvious, like, okay, that's why women are making less, because it's like 10% of women in engineering and the rest of the 90% are all men.
Right.
So it's like what?
Yeah, do the comparison in nursing and see what happens. Do male nurses make more than female nurses? I doubt it.
Yeah.
Why? Because it feels so dominated. If you even go to like male teachers and male administrators, on average, females make more in education than men because the overwhelming numbers in the field. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with situational. Like, your pay rates are situational, so you don't really know what that man is going through. You don't really know what that woman's going through. And if we're speaking about jobs, there's a lot of jobs that I know women are not going to go for, like collecting trash, going to the coal mines and stuff like that. A lot of, like, men do a lot of the most dangerous jobs, a lot more than women do. Nobody talks about that.
Yeah, and I think that like I said, you know, with when it comes to like this feminist part, because I know that's a big kind of issue. I mean, well, yeah, it's a big issue when you're out with somebody because you start to notice these certain things. You know what I mean? Like another thing I noticed that when I went out with a young lady a while back, um, it was like you know, she was a you know, this was before my ex, so she was definitely not anything considered conservative or Republican, but she basically started talking about having low self-esteem and you know, about being told that she wasn't attractive and a lot of different things like that. And I'm like, well, who told you that you weren't pretty? And she's like, society. And I'm like, okay, society tells you that, but you know, like to me, I'm like, man, you know, I think I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what society said. You know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, like society and be like, yeah, because I remember growing up like we weren't in. Like, you know, dark skinned men were not the thing. And you know, the early the mid 90s. We didn't start coming in till I think maybe Wesley Snipes and Blade started to bring us toward the forefront a little bit. But for the most time, it was just like, you know, you weren't light skinned, then, you know, like women did not really even deal with you. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was a situation for me where I was like, who told me that I wasn't the best? It was the women that I was trying to deal with. It wasn't society. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? So it was a different type of mindset. It was the women I try to go after would tell me, this is nah, you know, you're a little bit too dark for me. I want light-skinned babies. And I used to be like, okay, that's cool. Yeah. So I think that when it comes, like I said, when it comes to dating and political affiliations, I feel like I'm in the category of I don't think it matters, but I think in the future I've been a lot more cognizant of trying to find someone who is more or less, not necessarily the same, because the same to me is boring. Oh, I want to have somebody who quote unquote challenges me in certain areas, but I don't want to have someone where it's just like, you know, oh man, did you see what, you know, like I think it would be so boring. Like, oh man, did you hear what Trump did today? Yeah. No, yeah. I didn't hear what Trump did. What did he do? Oh man, he passed this great bill, man. Oh, I'm texting to you right now. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, what did you think about it? What do you think about it? Did you think it was great? I mean, he's trying to do this, he's trying to do that. Nah, I was kind of hungry. I was like, you know, like what? Because I also, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like politics is a point. Because there is a point where it could be the opposite and it could be a complete turnoff. Mm-hmm. But what I prefer, and if you want to go by preference, I prefer what I call apolitical, which means they don't care. Yeah. Like they don't care nothing about politics. I'm perfectly fine with those type of women who don't care and they don't know nothing. All right. But I couldn't date. I think now, I don't think I could vote someone who like supports like Ocasio-Cortez. I feel like that's just way too far out there for me, only because of the things that she's talking about. And if you actually research the thing that she's talking about, I couldn't see myself being serious with that person because I feel like we're never going to be able to get wealth together because you're going to be giving all our money away. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like
when I saw the topic, that's what I started thinking about. I was like, could it work? Yeah. Will it be a happy arrangement? That depends. Like if you have two people that's in the exact same if you have people exact same, like let's say field, like let's say if you have two reporters and one works for CNN, one works for Fox, and they're married, what do you think talks to the dinner table are going to be like? Unless they both decide we're going to leave it at work. Like,
yeah.
How long can that last?
Well, I was about to say, well, no. If you look at the picture that I posted on Facebook and that I'm going to post on the YouTube, there is a couple that have been married for a really long time. I forgot their names, but it's a bald-headed white dude. I think it's Joe. What's his name? And then Mary is their name Mary Matlin or something? Mary Matlin and I can't think of the other guy's name, but we'll figure it out in a second. But they've been now. She is as conservative as they come, and he is as liberal as they come, and they found out a way to make it work.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying, like, that's why I said I don't like. I'm not saying it couldn't work, but I think it's like very rare, maybe, that it does.
I guess
And
it
that's why I
depends
say
on.
it depends on how deep someone is in it. Like,
Yeah.
if there's like somebody that's just crazy about politics, and that's all they live and breathe politics, and then you're dating or married to someone who I guess does the same, but they have a different political view than you, it's gonna be a lot of clashing. And I think eventually, yeah, that's gonna take its toll on your relationship. But if it's like every now and then where you're just like talking about politics, then I mean, I can see it working. But that's why I said earlier, like, if everything becomes political, as it seems like it's doing, like everything's becoming more and more radicalized, and you know, the right is claiming values and the left is claiming values, and if you hold those values, you're instantly placed on one side or the other. So it's like,
oh yeah, this is, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, Mary Madeline and James Carville, they've been married since 1993. And yes, that's what, 25. They've been married for 25 years, and like I said, their views are completely completely opposite. Well, go ahead.
I mean, that's why it's like anything could possibly.
Anything's possible, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it depends on how compatible you are with that person.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like take for example, I just also feel like it's the priority thing, right? Because I feel like let's take YBLS, right? Like I'll take YBLS for example. And while I was there, I noticed there were a lot of attractive people there. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of attractive women there, a lot of them.
A lot of them.
A lot of them, yes, yeah. It shocked me.
A lot of them married.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Some of the upper echelon ones were married. But you know, at the same time, it gave me hope, because I was like, man, you know, normally when somebody tells you like, you know, I mean, I hate to say it, but you know, normally when you say black and conservative, that doesn't, you know, attractive doesn't necessarily something that I'll kind of, you know, attach to it. You know, I remember I used to be in this group on Facebook. Well, I'm still in the group now, but I used to be an administrator of a group. And I remember one time, one of the founders of the group, she was like, oh man, I got this young girl, man, she'd be perfect for you. And you know, my first question was, well, what does she look like? Oh yeah, she's pretty. Nah. Mm-hmm. It was like, we would probably agree view-wise, but you know, that's the reason why I don't get into this hyper partisan stuff, because like I was getting to a debate the other day because this guy wanted to tell me that conservative women are like, only conservative women are pretty. I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life.
I've heard that
too. You understand what I'm saying? Like, but it's crazy that we've gotten so hyper partisan that you can't even say, like, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure Halle Berry ain't going to the RNC convention, but for me to be like, oh, she's a Democrat, she's not attractive, that's the dumbest thing ever on earth, because it's like you grow up and you see all these entertainers, these people in music, models, even the video girls, you know what I mean? Like you grow up watching women.
Like to me, that, you know, that goes to, you know, the saying of, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Like,
correct.
Also, like, I feel like whenever I like,
the ugly is to the bone. That's what they say.
Yeah, but it's like if you say like a liberal woman, like to me, because like basically what it's always been associated with, or like the blue-haired, like overweight feminists in the middle of the road yelling at you, that's saying you can't talk about stuff because you're a man, stuff like that. And I think that's kind of where that stigma comes from. It's like because that side has been associated like with people that dye their hair and do all this crazy stuff, and you know, and
so then wait, so then what's the conservative woman look like then?
Well, you know, nicely dressed. Like I'm going off of.
Of course, like I'm saying you're going stereotypical, right? Yeah. So what? Okay, so if the blue-haired, overweight feminist is the stereotypical liberal, then what is the stereotypical conservative? Like in your head, like woman.
Well, it's not even my head. Like
yeah.
Yeah, but it's like pictures I've seen, like where it's like, oh, this is how you know it's a liberal, and they have the blue-haired, red-haired, overweight feminist, and then with the conservative, it's like a nicely dressed woman in like a suit jacket or something, standing with her arms crossed and smiling at the camera.
Got you. Yeah,
so,
I see what you're saying, but that correct. But I think, like I said, I think it's coming to a point where when we talk about politics and we talk about the position that it plays, I think that it's becoming more important, but less talked about almost.
Yeah.
Like for me personally, like I tend to talk about it's kind of hard now that I do this little podcast, and I'm trying to do some things politically and run for office and do some things like that. So it's going to come out. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's it is important, but I feel like I haven't gotten to the point where I can talk to a woman openly and honestly, like about just like politics and feel like I'm going to get a fair response. That's the reason why I feel like if I try to be like, not even saying like we even talk about, I mean, because it's just this topic of the day. What are we talking about? You understand what I'm saying? We could be talking about like, I dated a girl before. This was when this was about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where she said, she was from Nigeria, and she said she felt that, America didn't have a right to tell anybody they couldn't come here because they stole the land anyway. So we should just let anybody come here. I don't understand. And I was just sitting there thinking like, wait a minute. Like it's certain times when women will say things where I'm just like, yeah, I probably won't give you a second date because I can't see myself being with somebody who doesn't respect like basic laws of like a country's sovereignty. You know what I mean? Like it's not the most important thing in the world, but it's just like, if you're from open borders, how is that going to work? I understand it's not everything, right? Yeah. But it's certain views that I couldn't deal with. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't date somebody who is pro-choice. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Only because like I would want to have kids, and I'm like, if the miracle of life happened, like correct, you get mad. Yeah.
It's like I don't want to be at work one day. You get mad. You're pregnant. You get mad at me while I'm at work, and I come home and you went.
Yeah. Guess what? Yeah, I know you wanted. I know you want this baby boy, but guess what? It's gone.
Exactly.
You ain't nothing you can do. Like I couldn't. I wouldn't want to be with anybody like that. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I'm not gonna make this a whole about certain issues, but I just feel like it's certain issues that would be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good question. Is there a deal breaker issue for you?
That's definitely one.
Abortion? Okay.
Yeah, because like, I mean, even with the last girl I talked to, like that was one of my main questions, and I've kind of gotten her to come off of some of her stances because I'm like, well, this this point that you gave me wasn't true, stuff like that. Like I've kind of talked her down to now where it's just, she's for abortion and rape and incest cases. And then I gave her the percentages on that, and she was just like, okay, well, maybe not, but she still said, because she's thinking of it in the way of if it happened to her.
Right.
Okay, fair point, but I still disagree. We disagree. We're off of that point now. But that would be a deal breaker because thinking long term, like you said, another deal breaker would be gay marriage for me, like, and even like the whole transgender thing that's going on now. Like, if you're for that, again, thinking long term, I wouldn't want to raise kids with you, and you're telling them if they're playing around with their sister or something, and they say, "Oh, mom, I think I'm a girl," and in your head you have to adhere to what a 2-year-old just told you.
I didn't think of that. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Like that. So that's where I base actually a lot of my stances now. It's like, what would I want being taught in the future? And like, what are the, consequences of allowing stuff like that or marrying someone like that? It's like, if they get like again, if they get mad at you and they're pregnant, they go kill their baby. Oh, it was my choice. And again, there's nothing you could do about it. With the whole transgender thing, if I'm teaching my kid one thing and you're teaching the kid another, then you decide you want to divorce. And of course you might win the custody battle, I now have 2 daughters, apparently. Like, you know,
Yeah,
so,
right.
so
Yeah.
that's another deal breaker. Like, there's a lot of stuff. And that's why I came in saying that, you know, it could work, having 2 political, you know, opinions, but it's like it has to, like, you have to get down to like the very specific stuff that you agree.
Yeah. And I think that's respectable. I just feel like, you know, I wouldn't go and to me it's beyond parties, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's about, and like I said, I mean, if a young lady, I'm not saying I wouldn't deal with a girl who believed in open borders. I would just kind of probably realize at that point in time that we're probably not going to be a good fit. It doesn't mean that this her stance on open borders makes her undateable to me. It's just, it's certain things. Yeah, I mean, you know, if she wasn't like a heavy gun person, I wouldn't be tripping like that. Oh, you know, she's like, you know, and if she started using like the assault rifle or the guns or killing people and these school shootings and stuff like that, and she wasn't really pro-gun, I don't really think I would have a problem with that because, you know, at the end of the day, I'm still going to have mine. So I'm pretty sure if something happened and I had to pull my gun, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't care at the end of the day. Like, oh man, you know, I mean, I was in love with you until I saw you pull that gun on that guy. You know, even though he was trying to rob us and stuff like that. I mean, you know, that was just, you know, I don't think that would happen. But you
might get murder after that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think you bring up a good point, but I am no longer in the conversion game. Like I've tried to do it before.
I feel
like convert someone to my way of thinking because, you know, you want to say, oh, I got history on my side and I have all these right things to do. I'll come to the conclusion where, look, young lady, if this is how you feel, it's perfectly fine. If I do not want someone, it will not be because of, you know, because I wasn't unable to convert. Because you got to think about it the opposite way. You're not going to convert me the other way. So why should I be upset with a young lady if I can't, you know, she doesn't want to go to CPAC every year?
Yeah,
you know
I don't think you should date somebody if you're trying to convert them.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to do that like not dating. Because dating somebody and while trying to convert them, that's like 2 different things.
I mean, because like it's almost like they become your project rather than your, you know,
correct,
your partner, I guess. Like you don't want to date a project, you know.
Correct, and that's the reason. Yeah, literally. But that's the thing about it. Like that's why I say, like, you know, I am, you know, I prefer people that I consider apolitical and more or less like they don't care because you're more than likely to, you know, not get too much resistance. You understand what I'm saying? They're more in the learning for like someone whose political opinions aren't so concrete. Exactly. Like I said, mine are concrete and molded. Like there's no, I mean, she would have to be some type of fine to get me to go like back, not back, because I never really was a Democrat. I felt like I was always right of center and independent. But I mean, like I said, I've already said on the show that I'm voting for a Democrat and I don't have a problem with it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't bother me. But my thing is, I think that, you know, sometimes women, you know, that is something that they try to do. They like to have these projects. So sometimes I think it's well, he's a Republican now, or he's a conservative now, but maybe if he's with me long enough, he'll kind of switch over. And I think that sometimes that can cause problems as well because
absolutely.
You're not changing. So my last question of the night is from the ones that you knew, I guess were claimed to be a conservative or Republican Democrat, what is the difference? Is there a difference between your dealings with them? Do they act differently? Do they dress differently from what you were saying? Like the liberal girls, do they do this? Do they have their hair a certain type of way? Do the conservative girls do different things? You understand what I'm saying? Or have you just all kind of sort of been the same and just really depending on the person?
Well, it depends on the person, but
well, how about an easier question? Are there certain, and I don't want to go on a stereotype, but you can just, if it's stereotypical, it is what it is. But are there certain things that you could say, well, these liberal girls have this in common? If you could point to some characteristics that the liberal girls, quote unquote, had in common? Are there anything you can point out that way? Like the majority, like I'll give you some of mine while you think.
Well, no, I was actually gonna say like,
okay, are you good? Okay, go ahead.
A lot that I've especially when I was on campus, that I saw, like, liberal women tend to have this mentality of
on campus where?
University of Alabama.
Okay, this is checking. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
But it's like you run into a lot of them where it's like, you know what, you're gonna accept me for who I am, and I'm gonna make you accept me for who I am, no matter how I look, what I believe, whatever. Like it's you. It's basically you have to validate me.
Okay.
Most conservative women I've met, they don't look for your validation. But I think a part of that, like a component of that, or most conservatives I know as well, most of them tend to be Christian too. So I think a lot of their beliefs also come from there. Liberal women, in my experience, they're like the whole like coexistence like brand of women.
Got you. Yeah, I was gonna say I've never well, I told you I haven't really dated any conservative women anyway, but one that I do find that is pretty common is the a lot of the more liberal women use the I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual.
Yeah, that phrase.
Yeah, you heard that phrase before. Yeah. That's one that I'm starting to hear a lot more with women. Or, you know, I don't belong to a church, or I don't really believe in organized religion, but I believe in God type thing. You're like, well, you know, and then it's like you'll go out to eat and they'll say grace, and you're like, who the hell is she praying to?
Yeah, exactly.
She's not religious, but she's saying grace. Yeah. Well, baby girl, who are you talking to right now? You know what I mean?
The universe.
Like, yeah. I'm one. Yeah, I would say like definitely the spiritual, not religious, is definitely not. You know, even though, like I said, I have met some atheists though who are conservatives, but I haven't yet to meet like that I don't believe in organized religion, be conservative. But like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with conservative women. A lot of the women that I've dealt with that, like I said, were more on the liberal side, would be the confirmation was there. That they definitely kind of sort of needed your confirmation in things. Like, why didn't you tell me I'm pretty today? Or you didn't notice my hair, or you know, why didn't you, this is a new outfit, why didn't you say anything? It was a lot of that confirmation. And like I said, since I don't have the quote unquote conservative comparison, I can only tell you that I've only dated one side. So this is just some of the consistency, you know, the things that were consistent in what I saw with the women that I've dealt with. But I just, like I said, I just feel like those are some of the things that kind of go. I've heard, you know, about conservative women, and you know, some claims that, you know, they're, you know, quote unquote, they're more wholesome and all those other type of things. But I'm not necessarily sure if that's true as well.
I mean, I think, and that's why I think, like, to me, it's in the name itself, like conservative versus a liberal. Like liberal people tend to be more, I guess, like I said, the name is free, so to speak. Like they're more willing to try some of everything, whereas conservatives are like, I'm gonna stick to these rules. These are the rules I'm gonna live by, and I'm not budging from these rules.
Yeah, and I think another thing that kind of plays into that are these very large marches. Yeah. So it's like, what was they had the what was it called? It was the it wasn't the March for Our Lives. It was the march. What was it where they were basically saying it was okay for the slut walk?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, the slut walk. It's like, I don't think you would find too many Republicans or Trump supporters at the slut walk. Yeah. And it's not to say that liberal women or Democrats are slut. It's just saying that based on these marches, same way you could say the same thing with the a lot of the gay pride marches, or I mean, just because it's not necessarily I don't want to say the norm, but yeah, it's not necessarily the norm. You would see them, you know, at a pro-life rally, because you got to think about it. Some of the bad, if you will, like you don't see women at these white power marches either. You know what I mean? So it's not like the white conservative women are at these quote unquote racist rallies either. So it's kind of like they're only seen at like CPAC and Republican conventions. and like march for, like the pro-life march.
Yeah.
You don't really see them at these, the marches against Trump or just a lot of the big ones. Go ahead.
And that's because I feel like, I mean, of course, might just be a generalization. It's more of just a thought. I mean, I haven't proven it, but it's like conservatives tend to be more stable because it's like, again, like we're following, like most tend to follow a guidebook, which tends to be the Bible, or they tend to follow a set, rules. Liberals tend to be trying to make the rule book up as they go along. Like that's why you have 76 genders now. Like it's just like making up stuff as you go along and trying to make everyone else conform to that idea rather than, following the book that was already there because you say it doesn't work, and that's where the distinction is that I keep finding. It's just most people tend to have something they stick to. The liberals tend to be trying to make it up as they go. And if you don't agree with what I say, then you're wrong. Like I can't be wrong. You must be wrong.
Yeah, correct. Now, what I will say is, I will say that is the modern day liberal.
Yeah. Sorry.
Like basically because you're saying exactly what I was saying about how I feel about progressives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the progressive mantra is not only will we make it up as we go along, but if you disagree with how we make it up, then you're wrong as well. You know what I mean? So I think that, I just feel like this, like, I've been, I haven't been dealing with someone, but it's a situation where like, with people that I talk to, I pretty much try to leave, you want to, it's all about a value system that you're trying to establish. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you start your value system off at the Bible, then most of the times you can find a way to kind of work through it.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, for us as if you want to call us Black conservatives or whatever the case may be, or just Black people on the right, there is a disconnect between the Bible and Black conservatism, right? Because the majority of the Black people that you would encounter could be good church-going people, but they're not necessarily going to vote with you. You see what I'm saying? Like they're,
I mean, I live I have a family that's full of people like that.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. Like you have a lot of Black people who are in the church and will quote to you the Bible all day. And then they will definitely make sure they know that, it's not okay. It's only okay to vote Democrat. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that is a definite disconnect, because that's one thing I did notice, and I call it the difference between the Black evangelical and the white evangelical. Mm-hmm. Like I said, if I meet women in church, they're mostly Democrats, and that's what I'm saying, and that's a huge difference.
So what do you think about that though? Like the whole difference between like they're really conservative, but they still vote Democrat, even though if you go by a lot of Christian standards. I'm not saying everything that conservatives believe is Christian, but a majority of it is. So how do you
Well, one thing I'll say about this is, well, first of all, how do we identify the church, right? Think about how we identify the church. And if you think about how we identify the church, the thing that goes after that is, to me, the explanation, because we don't call it just the church, do we? We call it the Black church.
And right? that's actually where I was gonna ask you right before that question was, do you think these labels in general just need to stop? Because it's like, because I would say like on the left, which that's another label, but it's like, I mean, it helps with, of course, I guess organizing where people stand, but it's like with the general left, we'll say left because that was the first term I heard, but with left, you have the progressive left, you have the you have progressives, you have leftists, you have liberal, you have like all these different terms, and then for the right, you have conservatives, you have alt-right, you have like all these different stuff, and then when you try to like line them up or whatever, we all have the same general belief, but it's but then the labels themselves start making people conflict. Like like somebody could call me alt-right today. I mean, it won't mean anything to me really, but
I don't know what that means.
Then you spend more time trying to say, no, I'm not alt-right, than you are just
trying to explain what you actually stand for.
And it's like, to me, like it becomes a whole argument on what are you really, rather than what's right or what's the truth.
And
that's
see
why
that,
I was with the whole black church, white church thing. Like,
right.
there shouldn't even be a disconnect there. Are you the church? And like when you had said you need to identify what the church is, like to me, I take it a step further and say we need to find out what God said the church is itself. Like if we all purport to believe the same deity or in the same deity, find out what he says we are. And as far as I'm concerned, the Bible doesn't really, you know, divide up by race.
Yeah.
It was more with nationalities, like your nation, you know, your nation of people, not, you know.
Let's see, and that's why I would say I would agree with you on that. But I think that's where the big disconnect comes, because we have this thing called the black church, right? Yeah. So you say, well, why is there a disconnect between what the black church is? Because the other term you don't hear is you hear black church, you don't hear black evangelicals. You only hear evangelicals spoken most of the time when they're talking about white people. So a situation where there definitely is a disconnect, but it is because of the labeling job. And I feel like it's because you have people who well, first of all, let's just do the numbers games. There are more black people who are Democratic elected officials. So if you look at where black people go to church, if you look at where black people live, normally, like I said, there's a Democrat somewhere to be found somewhere in there. So most of the time you can look at it like maybe he attends the church, maybe he's inside the church, whatever the case may be. These are the type of things that you have, not necessarily combat, but these are the things you see, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's where it is, because in a certain church, that's where the congressman is going to go. Yeah. Right. We don't have the Republican delegates within the black community to reinforce that. You see what I'm saying? Like, even when you look at it's basically because the Republicans don't do a good job of branding. And I think that's the major problem. The Republicans have a brand that is basically white. It's a white brand. You understand what I'm saying? Like, because you say, like, even when you got a name like Republicans, like famous Republicans that are white, it's kind of like, where do you go? It's like a famous Republican in Hollywood is Clint Eastwood. You know, you got the same 3 or 4. Can you stop that, sir? Thank you. You got like Clint Eastwood, right? And then you might go, I don't know. I mean, it's just like you got the same 2 or 3 people that you could name. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the problem, because you have those same 2 or 3 people who you can name, but on the black side, you don't have it. So if a pastor was to be conservative or a Republican, he would basically just look like he was supporting something that was inherently white. And even within the black church, I feel like that is a problem, because we're not supposed to be, even though we still congregate most of the time with people of like race or whatever the case may be, I think that the black church still has some growing to do in the outreach section.
And also on that point, it's not just that. There's a separation in the black church itself. I live where I go to church. There's literally 2 other churches on our street, and we don't communicate with them at all. The only time I hear about them is when they're gossiping about them, like when a pastor did something wrong and they're talking about it. They don't actually communicate. Like, we're actually supposed to be one people, one body. Yeah, correct. We're not supposed to be. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. You were talking. Go ahead.
Well, we're supposed to be working together. Like when one church, gets on hard time, we're supposed to all come together to help them, no matter if they're white, black, doesn't matter. And that's one of my problems with the church itself. That's the separation.
Mine too. Actually, one of the first the first question I asked when I got back from DC, because when I got back, the church was actually just letting out. So I got back, drove to church, talked to one of the ministers there, which, I mean, it's my dad's church. And I've known like some of the ministers almost my entire life. First question I asked them was, do you allow your politics to determine your religion, or do you allow your religion to determine your politics? And he couldn't answer me because he never thought about it. What I meant by the question was basically, do you look at what's going on and you just vote for whoever you see that looks like you or is catering to you? Or do you actually listen to everyone and then look, I guess, towards the Bible to how you're supposed to vote or what you should be voting for? And ever since I've gotten back, honestly, it's been almost pure chaos with some of my family members because, you know, here in Alabama, I'm pretty sure y'all have probably heard, they just passed the bill for the abortion thing. Like, abortion's pretty much out in Alabama. Somebody in my family who just happens to be a minister, she was voting for the abortion thing. Well, against it, I guess. I don't know really how you would say that. Like, basically, she didn't want it to pass.
Yeah, she didn't want it to pass, so yeah, for it.
Yeah, like, she didn't want it to pass. So I'm like, okay, to me, and then when we had like a conversation or whatever, and there was a guy who was also like in a position of leadership who said his response was, "It's her body, her choice. I ain't got nothing to do with that." And I'm like, no. I was like, to me, it's like, you as a so-called person of God, you know, that's not the stance you should just take. I mean, I get it if you're saying that's somebody's choice, but but it's like, you shouldn't just sit back and be like, well, you know, I don't have anything to do with that. And it's like,
gotcha.
They was saying, like, with the whole outreach and actually communicating with other churches and everything, I noticed that when I was young. It's like, why is there Baptist? Why is there Methodist? Why is there Presbyterian? Why is there all these different denominations? To me, that shows right there, everybody read the Bible and they all took something different from it.
Gotcha. Well, I think now there you go. I think this is a nice segue because this is something that I would definitely like to discuss further. And I know we know plenty of our quote unquote Christian conservative brethren out there that could definitely get into this conversation, because I think this is a conversation, and it's almost a fault, not necessarily a fault, but it's something that they like to talk about, Republicans and conservatives about. And I think this would be a great segue for next week, because I would love to have a conversation about basically separation of church and state, morality, and its role in politics, because there are multiple ways that you can view your morality in politics and things like that, or your religion and politics. And I think this is one of those topics that where we kind of, there's so many different opinions on how to view it. And it doesn't matter whether you're a liberal and a conservative or whatever, it doesn't matter your ideological spectrum, doesn't matter your religion. There can be a lot of varying degrees on this topic, and I think it's a very, very good topic. Just like I said, I just wanted to, you know, we've been talking now for about a good hour and 30 minutes, and it's been a great show. And I was like, man, I was starting to be like, man, let's go straight separation of church and state. But at the same time, that's the reason why, you know, you want to give the people something to hang on to next week. But I would definitely, you know, like I said, like to have you back if that's a discussion where we could actually start to go into the church, its outreach. Why is it separate? What role does the church play in politics? Should churches be involved in politics? There are a lot of different ways we can go, but this was a very good conversation I had, and I argued up and down with a guy at CPAC about this. And I think it's a very good discussion where you don't necessarily just have that kind of sort of kumbaya, everybody agrees, because I can maybe agree with you on abortion. I can maybe agree with you on this, but when you start bringing up certain topics and you start talking about the role of morality and all these different things, then I think that, you know, like I said, it's a very good discussion to have, and that one that we will have right after Thanksgiving. So I want to thank everybody. I want to, like I said, once again, always thank my boy BJ. He is the Alfred to my Bruce Wayne, for helping me with my videos and my pictures from the Bat Cave up there in Knoxville, Tennessee. And Joe, I want to thank you for coming on the show. If you're interested, you can just message me for next week, because we definitely got plenty of quote unquote Christians that would love to talk about this topic. So we'll probably have a full CNN panel of about 25 people next week to discuss the role of the church, separation of church and state, and just basically those type of things. So once again, this has been the Aftermath. I've been your host, Saul G. Everyone have a blessed Thanksgiving. Please be safe if you live in places with snow. And we'll be back same time next week, 8 p.m. And we will see everybody then.